Hi.
Hey, Bridget, everything going all right?
2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. All right, cool. I'm gonna mute and go dark, but I'm here. All right.
Mike.
Hi, Reese. There you go. Hi, Reese.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Boy, I wish I was where you are there in Hawaii.
Yeah,
Is that
yes.
Kauai? Is that where
Yep.
that?
Yeah, from a helicopter ride. It's a picture we took.
Oh, it's beautiful. I've done that hike before.
Shut your door,
Marie.
honey.
Yeah.
What? What'd you
I've
say?
done that hike. I've done that hike when we went up to the
Oh,
up to the park up there, and you'd hike down into the valley. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. Well, I was in a helicopter
stuff.
flying over it, so, you know.
Ah,
Jake and I hiked down the Waimea Canyon about 20 years ago. And it's the only time in my life I really felt like I might not live. I mean, I really didn't know if we could get out because it was
oh,
all
coming back up. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard.
Mhm.
it's so slick. I mean, it
Mhm.
was really
Yeah,
scary.
yeah.
And the angles are so steep.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, I'm happy
You
to say
wonder-
And there may be dinosaurs there. That's because
who knows?
that's where they filmed, Jurassic Park. So
Yeah, of
part of it.
course, they would have had a long swim at that point in time, but you know.
That's true. Yeah. Let's see, start time. It's Karen. Hi, Karen. There's Karen. There's Ann. Hi, Ann.
I do that.
Rachel. Yeah.
Smiles, everyone.
Thank you, Deborah.
There we go. You're welcome.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank the staff.
Thank you, staff.
All right, 1 o'clock. Let's see. Greetings, everyone. Let me just check to see. All right, just a warning, everybody. Jaylene is not here and my iPad doesn't always see everyone who has their hand up. The tech folks are going to help us, but just wanted to warn you so you can raise your hand visually, or I can probably see you in the system. Is there a way we can get the agenda up on the screen?
The agenda is coming and I believe everyone is here. This is Bridget.
Fabulous. Thank you, Bridget. All right, then I will want to welcome everybody. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, staff, for taking the time to come to a special meeting. Let me call the roll. David Cahill,
Here.
Andy Elkin,
Here.
Reese Foxon,
Here.
Paul Heavenridge,
Here.
Tom Hauser,
Here.
Barbara McKenzie,
Here.
Sam Mulford,
Here.
Joel Newberg,
Here.
Rachel Parker,
Here.
Karen Schneider.
Here.
Excellent. All right, we're all here. So thank you very much. This is welcome to the budget workshop. It's going to be different this year because we have had our reimagining plan. So I'm sure the staff will let us walk us through this so that we can proceed. Are there any other announcements from staff from? Okay. I don't believe there is anyone from the public on the line, but I have letters from the public that I will read. All right. This is from Bo Simons. I want to urge the Sonoma County Library to rearrange its budget priorities to include building and housing of Sonoma County archives. This would strengthen the library's stature as the guardian of the archival record of Sonoma County. We know SCL has long been a part of the county's history, as well as its reluctant archival depository supervisor. With the Proposition-Y sales tax monies from several years ago, there is no excuse to evade assuming a leadership role in becoming the county's historical archive. Get the records moved now. Get the planning started on a new fire-safe archive. Fires threaten and may destroy the county archive before it can be moved. Forming study groups and inventorying the existing archives are adequate time-buying measures if the county archives were not at risk, but massive fires are predicted this fire season, which is already underway. Please rethink your reluctance and embrace your duty. This is a great chance to gain some great public adoration when you really need it. My name is Bo Simons. I'm a retired library employee. I spent 33 years as a librarian at Central and Healdsburg. My wife had a 30-year career at UC Berkeley Libraries and chaired the S&Y committee that helped secure the tax base you now enjoy. And this is from Benjamin Clark. The Sonoma County archives are unique. Even with unlimited funds, we could not replicate it should our archive be destroyed. Recently, as curator, I relied on archives stewarded by the Sonoma County Libraries for a long-term exhibition to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Redwood Empire Ice Arena, known as Snoopy's Home Ice. With over 85,000 visitors per year from around the world at the Schultz Museum, they learn not only about the cartoonist Charles Schultz, but also his beloved Sonoma County. The archive is not the story of only one person or one experience or even one place. Whether your roots go back in time immemorial or if Sonoma County recently adopted you, it doesn't matter. All of our stories have a home in the Sonoma County archives, and these materials need specialized care. The appropriate, useful, and needed solution requires visionary leadership that sees beyond the current compounding costs of neglect and understands that the benefit of stewardship is measured not from one fiscal year's budget line to the next, but from generation to generation. The Sonoma County archives bear witness not only to historical events, but also to its care. Warehoused at Los Guilicos, where wildfires and further neglect threaten it, it is past time to plan for a permanent, accessible home for our treasured past. I hope the Sonoma County Library Commission will provide visionary leadership and fund the relocation, improved management of, and accessibility to the Sonoma County Archives collection in the 2021-2022 budget. Thank you, Benjamin Clark, Curator, Charles M. Schultz Museum and Research Center. And from Janet Graysick. Dear Commissioners, it is imperative that the Commissioners properly fund our Sonoma County Archives collection currently housed at Los Guilicos. We all understand that the warehouse is a substandard building for the collection, already a dangerous and unacceptable solution, and now fire has come perilously close to the building on 2 recent occasions. I hope there is no question as to the value of the collection, surely not. Therefore, it seems there's disagreement over who should take responsibility for moving and safely housing the collection. We simply can't wait any longer for our leaders to waffle on a decision. Please step up and at the very least allocate sufficient funding to get the collection into a safer location until a more satisfactory solution can be reached. No one knows the full extent of what lies in the Coast, but enough is known that it would be a serious dereliction of duty for the commission to turn their heads away from the collection. That's a harsh statement, but it feels as though those who are in positions to make a difference now might find themselves still fiddling if the collection were to go up in smoke. Any harsh statements heard today would pale in comparison to the sorrow, dismay, and resulting fallout across the county if the collection was lost. Yours truly, Janet Joseph. This is from Jeff Elliott. I think we all agree the archives are the crown jewels of Sonoma County. Everyone also knows these treasures are in great peril at their current location. So I cannot understand why the Library Commission seems not to recognize the urgency of this situation. How many staff hours per week are presently being devoted to finding a safe home for these precious documents? Is there really no adequate location in all of Santa Rosa, Petaluma, Cotati, Rohnert Park, SSU, Healdsburg, Sebastopol, or Sonoma? Unless this situation is about to be resolved very soon, the commission should appoint an ombudsman to act on behalf of the archives, advocating for its safety and to document what is actually being done to avoid a potential disaster. Jeff Elliott. Mike is either Miller or Mueller. I have known both in my life. I would like to voice my support for making the Sonoma County Archives faster and easier to access. I would like my comment read into the record. I'm a local land surveyor who is on the board of directors for the California Land Surveyors Association, as well as the Sonoma Chapter's Historical Survey Records Committee co-chair. I have found that easy and cheap access to records is the only way that they will be used by the land surveying community, as many of our boundary surveying jobs are directly paid by our clients who often can't afford spending thousands of dollars on what might be a fruitless research trip. Making survey records fast and easy to access directly translates to better, cheaper boundary surveys that protect the public and enables all people access to quality work. The Sonoma County Archives contains survey records that easy access to would be a boon for our community. Thank you in advance for your consideration. Michael Mueller, PLS 9076. And then we have one from Scott Wilmore. Dear Commission members, I would like to encourage the Commission to budget accordingly for the relocation, preservation, and maintenance of the Sonoma County Archives. For all in Sonoma County, the preservation of these records in a safe and secure location should be paramount. Our history is documented, and these valuable records cannot be replaced if damaged or destroyed by wildfires. Additionally, these records should be made available to the general public. You may read these records into the comment on May 26, 2021. And finally, from Janet Graysick. Dear Commissioners, it is imperative that the Commissioners properly fund our Sonoma County Archives collection currently housed at La Coast. Did I read that one already? We all understand that the warehouse is a substandard building for the collection, already a dangerous and unacceptable solution, and now fire has come perilously close to the building on 2 recent occasions. Yes, I believe I did read this one already. Nevertheless, I hope there is no question as to the value of the collection. Surely not. Therefore, it seems there's a yes, we have read this one. Sorry, Ms. Graysick, I've already read your letter. And I believe that takes care of public comments. Now on to the subject of the day, since this is a budget workshop. We're going to have a budget presentation and staff recommendations. And if you would sort of set the stage for us. This is unusual. We are used to going through line items for hours at a time. And so if you would just kind of remind us all about the new strategic plan, the new direction, and what we're supposed to expect today, and then what is the expectation from us.
Certainly. So yes, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. This is the Sonoma County Library Budget Workshop for fiscal year 2021-2022. And as Chair Doyle said, we're going to walk you through the high-level examination of expected revenues and expenditures. It can't be emphasized enough. This is a very unusual year. It has been very strange for everyone worldwide, particularly here, because we've had so many challenges: the fires, the power shutoffs, the poor air quality, the pandemic, all of these things, and having no CFO in place, and trying to complete the reimagining plan. So all of these things needed to come together to help us craft a budget for this year. And I apologize. I know this is much later than you are accustomed to, but we wanted it to be as meaningful a process as possible. You know, we could have passed a budget earlier, but we didn't have all of the projections. We didn't have the results of the reimagining plan, which we are still developing. We have the input from the community. We have the consultant's report. We have developed high-level goals from that, and the staff are continuing to fill it in with measurable actions and objectives that we can accomplish. So what you're going to see is our plan for services through this year as we know it right now. And we will be coming back to you as we complete more detail with the plan. We may come back to you and ask for budget adjustments to continue making progress. But we need to pass a budget in June. And so this is where we are now. And I thank you for your patience through this process.
And is Mr. Seipel going to be participating also?
Randy Seipel from the county is here as well, and he will be available to answer questions about revenues and expenses.
Okay.
Would you like for us to get started now?
Yes, please.
All right, thank you. Rana, would you be able to bring up the PowerPoint? Thank you very much. So if we go to the next one. Thank you. All right, so we've had our introductory remarks and the overview and introduction. I do want to talk a little bit about the process that we went through. Our communications manager, Ray Hawley, will present a 6-year impact report that tells us where we were before Measure Y and what we have gone through to get up to where we are now. And then I will talk in more detail about the budget that we are presenting to you. And as I mentioned, Randy Seipel will be available to assist us with that process. So at this point, I would like to stop the PowerPoint and allow Communications Manager Holly to present his impact report, which is a different format. Ray, are you with us?
Sorry about that. Can whoever's controlling turn my camera on? I'm screen sharing and I can't figure out how to do that. There it is. I found it. Thank you. Sorry, I was muted. Many of you have seen this in a couple of iterations and it's back again. This started out as one thing and morphed into another, as a lot of these explorations do. This is primarily intended as a background to show you where we've been, as Director Hammond said, the last 6 years, to illustrate the trends that we've been looking at that impact the budget and how the budget impacts our trends, and to sort of set the stage for the rest of the conversation. So we're calling it an impact report. It was emailed out to you earlier today. I know you'll all be grateful to know that I'm not going to read every word on every page, but I'll just summarize a little bit of it. From 2015 to 2021, we've undergone significant change in leadership, both at the staff and commission level. The unprecedented environmental change with floods, fires, power outage, massive evacuations. No one would have imagined last year that we would have had to evacuate 1 million people and turn their power off. The library has rolled with all those challenges and done really well. And we're just going to talk a little bit about how that looks looking backwards. In the budgets you're used to seeing three major buckets: salaries and benefits, services and supplies, and then capital and facilities. To make this a little more accessible, and with Commissioner Elkins' advice and leadership, we've kind of rebranded those for the purpose of this document. We're calling it people, places, and resources. And each page that you'll see, each of the next 6 pages, is an overview of what happened in a fiscal year. You'll actually see 3 different ways to slice and dice what we do and how we do it. You'll see in the middle of the page on the left, the people, places, and resources item that I just mentioned. We also got some feedback from the Finance Committee that they'd like to see a little different way to carve up expenses in terms of the things we talk about. We talk about collections, we talk about technology, and of course we talk about salaries and benefits. You know, our people are our most important asset, and they're appropriately the biggest part of the pie. And then in the upper right, you'll see key indicators. These are mostly taken from the reports that we provide to the California State Library every year. And they cover the big items that tend to be measured on a library by library basis. And if you page through this, you'll see these trends. You'll see lots of upward trends, a few downward here and there, but mostly upward. And then we've got a couple of little anecdotes on each page that discuss key things that happened in that year, or key trends, like in this particular case, the impacts of really decades of insufficient funding, and then the massive recession. It started in 2007 and 8 and hit the library about a year later. We also opened a library in Roseland in 2015, despite all that, our first library in that community. 2016 and 17, Measure Y, as everyone knows, passed in late 2016. We didn't get our first check from Measure Y until early 2017, but the commission and staff leaders began to loosen the purse strings a little bit, knowing that money was coming. And so we were able to expand hours, spend more money on collections, bring in children's and teen service specialists, which we had not had before, not in the strength we do now. Makes a huge impact on how we interact and support public schools. And you'll see the budget crept up a little bit. By the way, since we don't have audited figures for the last couple of years, I know they're coming towards us, but we don't have them. To choose a baseline that we could compare each year, we chose the adopted budget. So in this case, over on the left where it says 19,360,000, that was the budget that was adopted just before that fiscal year started. And as you go through this, you'll see that's the adopted budget each year. Obviously, there were budget adjustments. Many years we spent under that amount. Some years we planned to spend over but didn't. But this is always the adopted budget. 2017 and 18, we started to see those external challenges that we talked about. It started with the Tubbs fire in late 2017, but we were able to do lots of other things. The photo in the lower right shows the refresh of the Northwest branch. And there were lots of plans put in place at that point to start working on other branches. You can see the dramatic impact that Measure Y had on the budget, 19,360,000 the previous year. This year, 30,477,000. And we began to invest in technology. Our technology was pretty old before this, and Mike and other people in the IT team were holding it together with duct tape and baling wire. And now they can use less duct tape and baling wire, thank goodness. 2018 and 19, there was really a strong movement from staff eagerly supported by the commission to focus on access. We went fine free that year, which made a tremendous difference. We had 30% of our borrowers had some sort of blockage or impediment to them using the library. We also introduced the Sonomify project, and later in that fiscal year, the Chromebook lending project. Again, a minor increase in the budget, fairly flat from 17-18 to 18-19. 19-20, we were poised for our strongest fiscal year ever. We had our largest budget ever, and then all kinds of things happened. The Tubbs and Nuns fires were followed a year later by the Camp Fire. There were devastating floods in early 2019. The Kincaid Fire came along, and then, of course, the pandemic, and we had to close our branches. You'll see, just as a quick comparison, I'm going to go back for a moment. Under the key indicators, you can see hours per week. Total was around 762. It was listed as 762 for this year, but that was pre-COVID, and that changed dramatically. Our overall total went down about 25% because we lost about a quarter of the fiscal year when we were unable to serve people in person, although we did pivot very quickly to online services. In 2021, you will not see the key indicator list because 2021 isn't over as a fiscal year for us. So we can certainly fill this in later. You'll see a significantly lower budget adoption. That was the so-called austerity budget that was adopted about a year ago. We had no idea what was going to happen with revenue. We've since found out, which Ann and Randy will be able to talk about later, that sales tax and property tax held fairly steady. Those of us who did not go stay in hotel rooms all bought new appliances instead. So sales tax managed to hang in there. We launched the Your Library at Home program. We launched an award-winning curbside pickup program, and we pivoted the strategic planning process to the reimagining plan. Just wanted to give you a couple more things. Talked with Commissioner Elkind a lot about what are the broad things that commissioners and the public ask about. And so we've just got a few bar charts on this page and the following page. This one shows revenue. And you'll see just that really dramatic shift after 2016-17. In our very first year, 11.5 million in sales tax. And it's gone up from there. The 2021 sales tax revenue was actually higher, but I want to remind you that this is reflective of the adopted budget and not the actuals, because we don't have the end of the year actuals, and we won't until later in the summer. Expenses are likewise divided by people, places, and resources. And you can see that people are, rightfully so, our largest expenditure. Resources have gone up dramatically, and resources is defined as all the things we provide. The wonderful things we provide to the community, and then places is facilities. Last page. We also wanted to give you some comparisons, again, based on frequently asked questions. How do branch visits compare to website visits? How does circulation and digital content use compare? And what are our assets? How many physical resources, meaning, objects, books, CDs, DVDs, that we lend to people, versus the electronic titles that people check out digitally. So you'll see those comparisons. Again, I emailed this out a few hours ago, and we're just doing a little bit of a high-level look. That's the end of my part of the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And just a reminder to everybody that while we have always had annual reports for Measure Y, This feels like annual reports to me for all of our funding, and I think it's a really useful tool for us moving forward. Any other questions?
And if your hand is up, I cannot see you because I'm screen sharing. Sorry.
I don't see any hands in the
I see Karen.
electronically.
Or nope, that was a thumbs up. My
Looks
Also
like,
thumbs up, but I'll just use the opportunity to say what a terrific report this is and very useful. Thank you.
Barbara has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. It's so easy to lose track of what happens, even in just a couple of years. And this really puts the story together in a very important way. And so thank you for all your work on that, Ray. I think it's excellent.
Well, I'm going to stop screen sharing. We've set the table for Anne to present your feast of the afternoon, which is her projections for the next year's budget.
Thank you, Ray. Rano, Bridget, can we go back to the PowerPoint now? Great, thank you. And we can go down to the next slide. There we go. So as has been mentioned, it has been quite an interesting year. After years of steadily increasing services, we had a sudden shift in 2020. External factors, fires, floods, power outages, evacuations, pandemic, all of those things had impacts on our staff and our buildings and our ability to deliver services. The branch closures, the constraints on our activities resulted in positions remaining unfilled and purchases not made and approved projects not completed, thereby increasing our fund balance. Just as the year has been unusual, as we've discussed, so has the budget process. And so the absence of a CFO has made everything so much more difficult. But what we're going to do now is walk you through a high-level look at our revenues and expenses. So next slide, please. All right. We made a pledge to the community. We committed to an in-depth reimagining plan and to following through on the responses and the expressed needs and aspirations of our community. We are in the beginning stages of crafting those responses. The ideas we put forward with this budget are intended as the first steps of our pledge to the community. More ideas will follow. Some will require financial investment. Some may result in savings to the library. All will advance the goals and objectives of the reimagining plan and our passion to serve Sonoma County. The full plan and goals will be shared with you at the June Commission meeting. Next slide, please. Okay, so in crafting this budget, we kept three things in mind. We are committed to providing extraordinary service to our community. We are a service organization, and our staff are not only dedicated, but innovative. We must give them the tools they need to do the jobs that they do so well. Second, we need to build in flexibility to react to changing circumstances, events, and needs, as we've seen in the past year. Oops. As we've seen in the past year, the world can change quickly, and we must be nimble enough to react. Third, as a taxpayer-supported institution, we must spend wisely and responsibly, including the appropriate use of our fund balance in service of the community. Next slide, please. Okay. Through our extensive reimagining plan process, we developed a list of 10 overarching themes that reflect the needs and aspirations of our community members. These were synthesized into 3 strategic priorities: provide opportunities for all to learn, contribute, interact, and participate, further community resiliency, and foster racial equity, social justice, and inclusion for everyone. Next slide. So the first priority, provide opportunities for all to learn, contribute, interact, and participate. We've developed a number of goals under that, and then we're beginning to fill in the goals with actions and objectives that we can accomplish. So for example, we want to empower youth development and lifelong learning, embody a culture of creativity for quality of life, expand technology, connectivity, information access, and consider the facility needs in context of changing needs of the community. And you'll see, as I mentioned, there are a few actions already penciled in there, and we are continuing to develop more. Next slide. Under further community resilience, we've built the goals of building community connections through outreach. That was a topic that was common throughout all of our listening sessions. People wanted the library to move beyond the buildings and be out in the community working with our partners, reaching customers and patrons where they are. And as mentioned, strengthen community partnerships to develop collaborative services to increase the reach of both partners. Advanced climate action. This was something that it's very important to our community, and who could blame them? We are in a vulnerable position here in Sonoma County, and the library would like to take a leadership role in reducing waste, energy use, and emissions. Next slide. Another thing that is very important in our community is fostering racial equity, social justice, and inclusion. So we want to offer more bilingual and culturally competent services and resources. And this will involve the work of our staff to remove those cultural and language barriers, to think about a responsive programming that is not always presented from the viewpoint of the dominant culture. And working toward becoming an anti-racist organization. We've talked about diversity training. We've done some of that already. We need to do more. We want to do a diversity audit of our collections, and we want to continue to support staff development. Next slide. So now let's talk a little bit about our revenues. We are projecting the property tax revenue will be flat compared to last year. So actual revenue of $21,451,663. And the sources that Randy Seipel has presented, has consulted on our behalf, say that sales tax revenue is projected to increase 7.2% over last year. So we're looking at a revenue $14,470,000 for a total projected revenue of $35,921,663. Next slide. And here's a little more detail about the sources of our projected revenue. It includes obviously property tax and sales tax, but we get smaller amounts, excuse me, from the city of Santa Rosa, state of California, miscellaneous charges, donations, contributions, and interest. Next slide. All right, now looking at expenses, we are projecting expenses of $44,130,712. So in our three big categories that we talked about, people, places, and resources, you can see how those will break out through the pie chart there. Next slide. So looking at people, this is the largest expense category, which is appropriate for a service-based public organization. In this budget, we're requesting increases for training, professional development, memberships, legal expenses, and also 5 new positions at 3.75 FTE. So it would 0.25 library specialist for Roseland, a senior library associate for the Bibliobus, an adult literacy supervisor for Central, a digital literacy specialist for IT, a second one, and a 0.5 FTE marketing specialist for communications. These are the first identified staffing needs. It's important to emphasize that these are the initial needs identified through the reimagining plan. We're about to launch an internal staffing study, And those results, combined with further development of the reimagining plan goals, may illuminate further needs for additional or different staffing. So if that's the case, we will request a budget amendment. Also in the people bucket, that includes $750,000 for our OPEB contribution. Next slide. Oops. Well, if you turn your heads, you'll see an overall organization chart that shows how our staff are distributed throughout the organization. We'll fix that for you before we send out the PowerPoint. Next slide. All right, looking at our places, the 4 million that we are requesting for places reflects increased costs of janitorial services and supplies and safety equipment, security services, utilities, tools and equipment. These are expenses that all public agencies, probably all agencies, period, are facing. A lot of these costs have just gone way, way up, and there's no, we have to have them. It also includes 3.6 million in unspent facility refresh projects that were previously approved by the Commission for Roseland, Petaluma, Guerneville, and Central. Next slide. And here's a little detail about the capital projects, the previously approved facilities projects, and the new capital projects or purchases for IT that are being requested. Total of 4,920,000. Next slide. Looking at resources, this category includes an increase in the public services budget to include training, supplies, software licensing, programming, and extra help. The technology bucket includes equipment leases, device charging lockers for our patrons, laptops for staff, data line upgrades, Chromebooks and laptop carts for the branches, and additional tote lifters for the automated materials handling system. The collections budget, of course, includes our books, our digital resources, our databases, supplies that are needed for those collections. We're asking to increase this budget to 12% of our operating budget, which is the minimum that a library of our size should allocate. Communications budget includes advertising, printing, software, extra help. Budget and finance includes the outside accounting services that we get through the county and the auditing services. And then the general category is training, safety equipment, professional development, contract services, memberships, and legal counsel. Next slide. So the majority of the library's expenses are fixed, and that means that we don't have any choice. We can't decide not to pay our staff. We can't decide not to pay for insurance or safety supplies or utilities. We can't ignore our responsibilities to OPEB and PERS for our retirees. These costs represent 85% of our total budget. That doesn't leave a whole lot for adding collections, technology, programming, and other innovative services to our public. Next slide. So to balance the budget, as you've noticed, our projected expenses are greater than our projected revenues. This is not uncommon in government organizations. We have a very healthy fund balance, and it is appropriate that we use a portion of it to balance this budget. Next slide. So as of now, including the 3.6 million in capital projects, we are showing an estimated ending fund balance of over $27 million. Even though we're looking at a deficit for the 21-22 budget, there are adequate reserves on hand. The adoption of a so-called deficit budget is not unusual and reflects millions in unspent funds from previous years, especially fiscal year 2020, 2021, which showed higher revenue than anticipated. This use of unspent funds will leave the library with more than $19 million in our fund balance. This use of fund balance is a common practice at public agencies that are navigating the ebbs and flows of revenue and expenses. It is also not new to the library. As you'll remember, for our 2019-2020 budget, we allocated $2.84 million for similar reasons, to allow us to accomplish more for our community using funds that were already collected. These additional expenditures allow us to continue a high level of service and pivot to the innovative goals and actions that came from the Reimagining Plan. And it will also allow us to support a solution for the Sonoma County Archives. Next slide. So we're going to take your feedback today and then prepare a final budget for adoption by the Library Commission at your June meeting. Next slide. And here we get to your questions, and I'm available. Randy Seipel is available, and Ray's available. We have also, I believe, public services and IT managers here. So if you have specific questions for them, we'll be happy to address them.
And this is Andy. I'm going to jump in if I may.
Certainly.
First of all, thanks very much for, I'm getting an echo.
I suggest everybody else mute.
How's that? Much better. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Ray for doing just a fabulous job on the impact report. That really was a very nice lead-in. And I'd like to thank you and your team for organizing this presentation, which I think at a high level really does lay out the priorities of the Reimagining Plan and start to fill us in on how we're going to be meeting those. So that's terrific. I had a few questions, but I'll just start with one as a quick follow-up to something that you just said. At the beginning of the meeting, we heard a number of public comments about the archives. You mentioned that this budget will allow us to provide some funding for the archives. I didn't see that called out anywhere in the facilities. So I'm wondering if you could just elaborate a little bit on that, and as a revision request, since we know that this is front and center in the attention of many of our constituents, I think it's going to be important to call that out in the slide presentation that has the final. Anne, if you're talking, I think you're on mute.
Her battery died, so she has to plug in. That said, I think that, there is work being done. The archives, of course, have to be addressed. Lots of work is being done and not at the public level yet. So there are some things that we just can't, that the staff is working on right now that we hope will be resolved fairly shortly.
I understand that we may not be able to call out the specific actions, but we're looking in some of these slides at expense projections that are of relatively modest amounts for different items. I'd really like to see some funds set aside for this purpose. That's my comment. Thank you.
Noted. Anybody else?
Commissioner Newberg.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if we can find out if the people we're working with at the county are also getting letters urging them to do something about preserving the archives, and if these letters are coming from the same people.
We will check, but we imagine so, but we will check. Thank you.
And I know you can't see hands up, but I know mine is up, and I believe Barbara's is up as well.
Okay, since you're talking, you go first and then Barbara will go. And I can't see the hands, so.
Okay, thank you. Well, this gets back to something that I've brought up in the recent past, which is the need to ensure that our senior executive has the budget flexibility that she needs. I understand the archive's not standing out in the budget, but that's partly because the line item that we had before is kind of overcome by events, as it were, OBE. And so it's almost like we need the capacity to say, these are some of our priorities, but it doesn't mean that we have an actual number attached to them. And in fact, that number may change as things transpire. But we're in a very rigid budget format that requires all kinds of pre-approvals and locks us into a certain lack of agility that prevents us from doing something like that. There's just no room in there for TBD.
I think the Finance Committee has discussed submitting policies for the commission's consideration for relaxing some of those rigid rules. So I think there will be more on that. For example, the dollar amount that that Director Hammond has to come to the commission for approval. Yeah. Barbara?
Thank you. I second what Andy said. Obviously, a great area, and the concern that we continually get are concerns about the archives. And I know there's a lot going on about the archives, and I'm not sure we're always letting everybody know what all we're doing, even though we're trying. That we're not unaware, and we are as eager, and that we see the urgency of this in the same way that the public does. I'm not sure that always gets across because the tone of the letters continues to be a lot of worry and concern that, we're not doing anything. So I second what Andy said about seeing some more detail about that. I was pleased to see much more detail and clarity about the fund balance. And this has always been a difficult kind of thing for commissioners to get their head around. It's been stated in different ways. We have a fund balance policy. My little rough calculations tell me that even if we do this transfer of what seems to be a lot of money out of our fund balance, we're still well in excess of our fund balance policy reserve. So that is good to know. But I really like the way Randy and his staff have continued to enlighten us about the specifics of the fund balance. So I thank them for that. My feeling has been that because positions, FTEs are fixed costs for the future for the most part. I was under the impression that we had a policy where the commission would adopt each position formally, not in a kind of a general sense of like whatever we said, 5 FTEs. And that leads me to the sense of I really like what I saw today. As a person, in terms of the commission's responsibility as a fiduciary or fiduciary role, I'm still a little bit uncomfortable that this is all really nicely laid out in a very general way. It makes sense in a general way. I'm just concerned about seeing the details on the same day that we're going to adopt the budget. So I don't know if I'm trying to wear 2 different points of view here and understand the need for flexibility, the need to see, as Anne has correctly pointed out, what is extraordinary about this year and all the things that are coming together, and just feeling confident that I am doing, my appropriate role as a commissioner to really adopt a budget with a lot of knowledge about it and not feel like I'm just kind of rubber stamping what's put in front of us. So I'm not wanting to be difficult or create issues. That's just how I'm feeling about the kind of more general nature. The fact that we didn't get anything ahead of time and we kind of got this afternoon and as beautifully done as it is. I don't know. I'm curious if any of the other commissioners are feeling that way.
Director Hammond, would it be possible for you to come up with figures in time to have, say, a an additional finance committee meeting. That is certainly possible. We can.
What kind of figures are you looking for?
Well, in terms of me, just, I don't know. I just feels like a descriptive budget, a very nice descriptive budget.
Mhm.
But again, maybe I'm just thinking in old terms, and the other commissioners are going, oh yeah, I get it. You know, Barbara, just go with the fact that we're doing things in a more general descriptive way this year. So,
Well, I believe, I believe staff is following the direction of the finance committee, but certainly if we need additional information,
Mhm.
I'm sure the staff is prepared to do that,
Certainly.
but we have it's only how many days until the full commission meeting. And granted, we're supposed to adopt a budget that day. This, as Anne has said, it's a very unusual year. So,
Commissioner
David
Cahill
and Reese
has
have
had
their
his
hands
hands
up.
up, as does Reese.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Two things really. I had a chance to look up our present budget as is posted on the website. It's 15 pages long, including a host of different ways of looking at each, what I would call line item or account item, and each for both revenue and expenses. And my view is that the final budget we're going to be presented with is going to be generally in the same format. Details that go along with the conceptual overview that Anne has presented, which I think is a fine idea. I'd like to see the detailed budget, maybe a week or so before we have to adopt it so that we'll be able to look at some of the details. And the reason I raised my hand, though, is I have a different issue. On a couple of presentations that you've made, you said we're not going to be doing some of the things that we've been doing presently. Could you please tell us what those are now?
We are still refining that. We know that we can't keep adding new things and continuing to do all the same things we were doing. That's something that staff is working on right now, and I will be able to bring you some more information about that at the next meeting.
Well, how does it affect this budget? I mean, we've seen the current budget online has a very nice indication of what we're going to be doing in the first page. And I assume that for this coming year, it's going to be mostly positive, but I think we should need to know fairly quickly where the knife is going to be going in.
And I will.
Let me just say, I'm not sure it's a knife. I think that the library is not doing things that say are less relevant than they used to be, or aren't reaching, they're reaching communities that don't exist anymore, or those kinds of things. I think that this is not a question of slashing services by any stretch of the imagination. It's just migrating in a different direction.
Yeah, and whatever we do is likely to save time. It may not necessarily save money.
Okay, look forward to more detail.
Certainly.
And Reese, did you have your hand up? Commissioner Foxton?
Yes. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, I'm
Yes.
Okay, I agree with Barbara. I think we need the details too. I love this presentation. It was really good. It gave us a good general view, but our responsibility extends way beyond a general view. And frankly, I'm a kind of person that needs a little bit of time to look at it, to see it, to be able to go through it. And then I would like to have had that before so that I could match what she's just told us with what I saw in the details. That was my preference. And I am not, I told Deborah today that I'm both auditorial and visually dyslexic. And I have my way of working with things, and I need to be able to process it. If I can't process it, then I'm just rubber stamping, and I'm not really fulfilling my job as a commissioner, because we are the final budget people. They make it, they tell us what they need, they describe it to us, they, you know, format it, what have you. But in the end, we're the ones that are responsible. And if we don't have the information in the detail as well as in the generalities, then we can't do our job. So anyway, thank you. And like I say, I appreciated this presentation. It was really good, really quick. We were done in 40 minutes. We could have been out of here and had a budget. So take care.
I don't know that there was a move to approve this as a budget.
Absolutely not. No, I knew that. But I also am willing to have a special meeting if we can't get it all together by the June meeting, regular June commission meeting. I'm willing to go for a special meeting in June to finalize the budget for next year. So if we need to do that, that is a possibility.
Thank you. Commissioner Cahill, you still have your hand up, or are you?
Oh, sorry, I just lowered
No,
my hand.
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we were being responsive. Anybody else?
Deborah, this is Andy. I've got a question, please.
Sure.
I have a couple of specific questions, but this is a more general one. And I guess this is for Randy. At the last Finance Committee meeting, we saw a pretty extensive Excel document that was referred to as, you know, a budget workbook, and sort of had the bottoms up detail that would complement this top-down description. I'm just wondering, what is the current status of that? And are there, in fact, the kind of detailed numbers that Barbara and Reese are asking for available in some form at this time?
Yes, absolutely. The budget workbook is what fed into the presentation that was put together by Ray. I verified all the numbers that were in there were coming from that budget workbook. And as you noted, it's very, very detailed, and we certainly can make that available to the commission for their review. Absolutely.
Because it seems like that. Thanks, Randy. I thought that was the case, but it sounds like that's what Barbara and Reese are asking for. I'll come back to that later. I had some additional questions for Anne. The first is kind of along the line of what Dave Cahill was asking about. And I'm thinking about our staffing, and I'm just wondering, you alluded to the automated materials handling system, which we have, funded, and you also have alluded to the need for greater outreach. You mentioned the bibliobus and more outdoor services. I'm just wondering, as part of the overall kind of changes that you're seeing with this budget, are we able to accomplish kind of any sort of shift from back office book sorting that might have been necessary but was not public facing to more direct service to the public because of greater efficiencies that we've been able to achieve in the back office?
Yeah, that's a great observation. One of our motivations for the automated materials handling was to provide more ergonomic support to our staff, to let's automate the things that can be automated so people don't have to keep picking things up and putting things down, and make it easier for them to do their jobs in a timely fashion. I think that if we take the reimagining plan and we take the staffing study that we're going to be doing, we'll be able to see where the points of confluence are in terms of changing from a materials moving mindset to a service provision mindset, more of a service provision mindset. And I think the changes that we're looking at are in terms of more outreach, more going out into the community, not necessarily remaining behind a desk in a physical building, but having people who can respond to different needs of the community. Maybe that means we want social services, people with social services skills, or people with more language skills or technology skills. We don't necessarily need people with library science degrees for many of the services that we're looking at here. So we could have a tipping point of not only the number, but the type of positions that we will be using to move forward some of these goals. That part we don't quite know yet. So that's why I said we may come back to the commission for a budget amendment if we see that we need to change our staffing in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I know you mentioned the staffing study. So I'm hopeful, I'll just say, I'm hoping that after you do the staffing study that you'll be able to provide us with something along those lines, because I think that would be very meaningful to our constituents if we're and if I could ask a follow-up question. I know you were about to say something, Deborah, but along with that, and if this is premature, you can just say so, Ann, but I'm thinking about how the library responded during the pandemic and what kinds of innovations and lessons learned we might be able to carry forward into the year and the years ahead. And so as an example, I'm not saying this is what you're doing or should do, but when the libraries were all closed, we had access, our patrons could reach out to us electronically or by phone for help, kind of replacing the model of needing to have a person right there in the branch. And I'm wondering if you're looking at any kind of centralized customer support that would enable us to be more efficient in providing those kinds of services.
Well, we do actually have that. We have Ask a Librarian that people can access at any time. But one of the things, first I'd like to say that I was just extraordinarily proud of our staff during this whole past year of the pandemic, all the upheavals that we've all been through. They kept doing whatever they could do, and they found new ways. We started with the online programming. Who would have thought that was a thing? But they developed it into a tremendous thing. The mind of a scientist, all of the different gardening programs, the wonderful, wonderful ways they found to reach out to the community, and increasing the purchase of digital materials, downloadable materials, and developing ways to get those materials to people when we couldn't invite them into the buildings. So those are some lessons that we've learned, that we can be responsive, we can be innovative. And I just want to find ways to encourage the staff to continue along that path, because the more we can, innovate and iterate and develop new things, the better position we'll be in to continue to provide the great services to our community.
So, for example, would you, or are you having any discussions about, continuing curbside service even as the library opens, and continuing online programs even as programs resume in person?
We're definitely going to continue curbside because we see that as a service that people need and they're going to continue to want. Stores do it. Other places do it. There's no reason why we can't do it. It has reduced in most places. And once people can come back into the buildings, they want to do that. But for those people who aren't comfortable coming into the building, or maybe they've got some other reason why they can't do that, curbside is something we want to continue to provide. Online programming, I think, also will continue to be a component of what we do. because we've discovered that we're so good at it and that people really respond to that. And it may be a while before we can have large groups of people in the building again. So we're going to continue to do what we can do.
That's great. And I have one final question, Deborah, and then I'll yield. And this is a selfish question for anybody listening, because I am appointed by the city of Healdsburg. But prior to the pandemic, Healdsburg had been scheduled for a refresh.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that it's not part of the capital improvements for the coming year. And I'm wondering, I've been reading separate and apart from the library, I've been reading about all of the challenges that are facing the construction industry. And I'm just wondering, are the projects that you outlined for this year constrained by our ability to manage them, or another factor? Or just wondering what I can tell my constituents about the reason for the fact that we're not scheduled for the year ahead.
Mm-hmm. Well, the branches that were listed there are ones that we actually started before the pandemic shut us down. So we wanted to make sure we finished up the ones we've started. We hadn't really gotten started on Healdsburg yet, but we've not lost track of it. And if we finish those 4 that are on the list, then we'll probably say, you know what, let's see if we can go ahead with Healdsburg.
Okay, fair enough. So, and just a final comment, and I realize I'm monopolizing a lot of airtime here, and I apologize. As I think about the work that Ray did on the impact report, I found that very powerful, and yet it seemed to me to be powerful in retrospect. I'm not sure, and I was not on the commission all of those years, but I'm not sure that we set out each year to say, hey, this is really what we want to accomplish in the year ahead. It may have evolved that way. I really like the idea of setting our key themes, our major goals, our guiding principles up front in advance, rather than looking back after a year or two and saying, gee, what did we do that year? So I appreciate all the work that you and the staff have done on that. From the comments that Barbara and Reese made, sounds like if we can provide the supporting details that Randy alluded to, and they match up with the big picture, that we should be able to move forward pretty expeditiously in approving the budget for you and your team.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Barbara.
Yes, thank you. And those are a lot of good questions, Andy. Appreciate it. And I just wanted to ask Anne, I brought up the staffing survey, I think, before, and it's been, we tried one before and it didn't work. Do you have a general, you mentioned, I believe that's about to launch. And of course, here we are heading right into June 15th and the opening of the state. I mean, all the timing is just so nutty, but do you have a sense of what the timing on the staffing study will be? Like when it will start and what their goals are, and if we're going to go branch by branch, or what that's going to be like?
I asked Sarah Van Trees.
Could I ask everybody to mute themselves, because we're getting a lot of echo?
Okay. Sarah Van Trees and Jamie Anderson are leading that project for library administration, and they're working with the union. So I believe Nick Alva is going to be union representative, and they have one other staff member. And then I asked that they hold off just a little bit longer so that Erica, who's our new deputy coming in, will be able to participate as well, because I think, first of all, she'll bring a new perspective from a different library system, but also it will be a wonderful opportunity for her to really get to know our system. And so it'll be doubly important for her to participate in that. They have not had a chance to meet and set out their process and their timeline yet, but I will certainly update you on that as soon as I have it.
Thank you for that. I think I'm glad to know this is going to be an internal process with our folks. The last one we did was hiring outside consultants, and I don't think much came of it. So this sounds like a good approach. Thanks very much, Ann.
Sure.
Just a follow-up to that. I know we have a union negotiation coming up, and so if and if this is sensitive, you can say, well, we don't have to talk about it here, but you know, as you're reimagining, as you're looking at where different skill sets are needed and that sort of thing, will that require redoing job descriptions? Is that part of the, okay.
It very likely could, yeah.
Okay. Going to be an interesting year. Rachel.
Hi, thanks. This presentation really emphasizes the overall concepts that the library is reaching for, and I applaud them. I think they're wonderful. But we've been talking a little bit about the staff here, and this is where my question comes along, especially along the lines of if job descriptions change or people go from being materials handling back of the house to being asked to go to more public facing jobs. I just want to make sure that there's appropriate amount of training in the budget for those recast jobs, if that's what they are, so that, you know, long time, new, whatever, employees feel supported in changing their roles and taking on something new, that it's an opportunity for them to take on something new and not we've got something nasty in mind for you.
Thank you.
I think there's going to be a lot of training this year, a lot of training at all levels. You know, how do we talk to each other now that we're in the same building again? That kind of thing. Anybody, any other questions?
Commissioner Mulford has her hand up.
Commissioner Mulford.
Hi, thank you. And I just wanted to check in. I understand that you are working with Lori Ayer with respect to the automated materials handling project at the library. And I just wanted to say that it might be helpful for other commissioners who may not be familiar with the concept of AMH and also the details associated with how it does free people up to do more. I think, I don't want to say more important, it's very important in terms of the materials handling, but it's more community facing work, or it's more engagement work, et cetera. And it allows, I think, people to imagine what they could be doing if they weren't actually, you know, dealing with books and moving books around so much. And so I know that Lori has done a lot of presentations to commissions in the past that will help them to understand kind of the magnitude of what's possible. And so it may be something that she could do for us.
She in fact has done that for us. She did that
already.
Yes, she did that as we were considering the system.
Okay, great.
It was a great
Must have been before I joined.
Carrie, that's right. There you go. That's right. Although a refresh might be nice for some of the newer commissioners, but.
Yes, and we're also preparing a video. Bridget and Jamie are preparing a video that we'll be able to share with you.
Great. Thank you very much.
So let's just review the bidding. If we have additional information, if we have, do we think we can make a decision at the June commission meeting, or do we think we need an additional finance committee meeting? I'm not hearing a huge push for an additional finance committee meeting. Commissioner Elkin, do you have a thought on that?
Well, I want to be respectful of what I heard Commissioner Foxen ask for. Currently, the commission meeting is scheduled for June 7th, which is a week from this coming Monday, which is Memorial Day. When would, and this is a question for Randy and Ann, when would the commissioners be able to see the detailed spreadsheets that support the very clear high-level narrative that Anne provided today.
We should be able to put something together for you very soon. Let me think. Today's Wednesday, possibly by the end of the week. We'll aim for that. It may be Monday, but we'll aim for Friday.
Well, okay, then my question, and Reese, I'll direct this to you since you were the one who asked, not to put you on the spot, but if we were to get those detailed numbers, best case by the end of the week, or let's say worst case by end of the day on Tuesday, would that give you sufficient time to feel comfortable about making a decision at the June 7th commission meeting?
I think it would, unless I was really confused. But yeah, I think that would be time enough. And if not, I'll let people know, within a couple of days of getting it.
Well, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I guess I would ask the rest of the commissioners, do you feel like this would be adequate time to review this on your own, or would you specifically like the Finance Committee to meet? Dave, I see you've got a hand up.
Yes. If we could, if we could see the current version of the workbook without any changes, we could have that tomorrow. I am certain that there are bound to be several important changes between the workbook and the final version of the budget that we're going to be confronted with on June 7th. But if there are not, but for me, just having the present version of the workbook is enough, because I'm one of these people who actually reads the spreadsheets that Randy sends to the Finance Committee and have a chance to compare what's going on. So if we could have what is existing, typos and wordos and all, immediately, then I don't see any reason for a Finance Committee meeting. And we should be able to move ahead with final adoption on June 7th, because I really like the overall budget. I think it's an excellent job, and it's just the way we should be going.
Well, I just as a procedural question, I think that we could send the workbook to the Finance Committee because you've already seen it. But if we send it to the entire commission, then it has to be a public document. And so, and if the staff doesn't want the workbook with typos, et cetera, to be a public document, then I think that we have to honor their wishes, because who knows where it will go.
Can we do both? Deborah, to meet Dave's request, can we send it to the Finance Committee now and then send the corrected version either end of day Friday or Tuesday of next week?
What I would like to do is take another look at the workbooks. There's a lot of detail in there that I would like to put it in a more concise format for you. And so that's why I was asking for a couple of days to do that.
By the way, this would not be a Finance Committee meeting. It would be a commission meeting to discuss the thing. So
that I had heard someone say Finance Committee meeting.
Yes, you did. I said that if I didn't think a Finance Committee meeting would be necessary, if we could see the current version of the workbook immediately, I'd rather not see any line items collapsed in order to make it more concise. But I wouldn't care if that had happened by the time we get the actual agenda for the June 7th meeting.
We can send you the workbook, and it wouldn't have to be if you want to take a look at the workbook.
Yes, I really do.
All right. So, Anne, what is your pleasure? Yeah. We can, if we can, who else who has been on the Finance Committee needs the workbook, and then otherwise, Anne will, if we send it out to the whole commission, then of course it's a public document, and that's fine. It could be, I think, part of the commission agenda packet.
Barbara and Karen have their hands up.
Anne, have you got a thought about that?
I'd like to,
Just before I call on them.
yeah, well, if you don't mind, I would like to hear what Barbara and Karen have to say.
Okay, Barbara.
Well, it's a little bit of a breakdown because we had the finance committee meeting and my understanding was our chair asked for 4 documents, which I don't remember what they all were, but one of them was the workbook, and one of them was Ray's impact report. And I believe there are a couple other things that we would all have before this meeting today. And so I realized that there's so much going on. It's very, very difficult to pull these things together, but I think that's kind of what I'm feeling like we're lacking is the detail of this. And I also want to say that our commission committees are also public things. So we can't just selectively send things out to individual members. I mean, it's going to be, if it's going out, it's public document. I mean,
well, I agree, but he's already seen the document. And so and the meeting was in fact public. So it's, I think that would not be invading anyone's privacy, but I certainly understand that perhaps we haven't gotten the documents that we thought we were going to get today. Most of the information is in the presentation, however, but do you have an idea of whether you want to have a separate commission meeting? That's the question before the floor, I think. Do you want a separate commission meeting? Do you want a separate finance committee meeting to talk about this?
Well, I think the point is, if we are following some version of our procedure in the past, the finance committee would have had all the information, felt comfortable making recommendations. And I don't think that quite came out of our last finance committee meeting. So if we're going to circulate these documents, and the finance committee is the kind of the filter and making the recommendations, then it needs to be a finance committee meeting. But I will default to our chair, like, how he sees us, procedurally. I think it would be, I can't get my hands around what it is that is frustrating to me, but it's just this kind of lack of detail and just being so short in terms of the process and the timing. It's not quite jibing for me. And, like I can look at the work back and I go, oh, great. I have look at the workbook, and then we have the commission meeting and then I have questions about it, but we already have the final budget ready to adopt. It's just doesn't feel quite fleshed out. And anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Karen.
This is just a request that I would prefer that we have this commission meeting in June as scheduled and discuss the budget, but I would like us to practice restraint on other items on that agenda. Just really make the budget the focus, and unless it's absolutely essential, please.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed. So it's not a 4-hour meeting. I'm not hearing a majority say we need a separate commission meeting. And honestly, I think that the finance committee has seen most of the documents and can walk the rest of the commission through some of it if we, if we get the information in enough time so that we all review it. It is different. It is a different kind of work that we've done. It's not that we haven't looked at line item budgets for the last few years, but this is different. This is just, it's a different way of doing things. And but I think that we can probably do this all in the commission meeting if we get the documents that we need to take a look at.
I just like, yes, I just like to say that I agree with Reese that what I would need would be that detailed information. And if we got it by Tuesday, then it would be fine. I would have enough time to look at it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thomas, has his hand up.
Go ahead.
I think we should go ahead with the plan. Hopefully, we're going to have something by Tuesday, and we'll have the commission meeting the following Monday. And if people don't feel comfortable with the information they've received that is available at that time, then we may have to schedule a special meeting sometime later in June. We'll just have to see. I don't think we're going to get consensus because we don't know what it's going to look like and what's going to happen. So I'm just going to prepare myself for a possible another meeting in June. And if we don't have it, we don't have it. I want to second Karen's thing. Let's cut the budget of the agenda on June 7th as much as possible. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other comments, I think we're going to move forward with that. We're going to move forward. We'll look forward to getting additional information. We will have a robust conversation at the next commission meeting. And if necessary, we will have another commission meeting in June to finish the conversation about the budget.
Thank you very much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Director Hammond, is that suitable?
Perfectly fine.
All right. Do we have any other business? All right, I'm just checking to see if there are any hands. All right, then thank you all very much for your, I'm sorry, there is one more a late note in public comments, and I just want to make sure that we're sensitive. I will read one last very brief comment that should have been in public comment. Dear commissioners, and I didn't see it until after I had finished reading the letters. I'm writing to request that you include funding for the relocation, improved management of, and accessibility to the Sonoma County Archive collection in the library's 2021-22 budget. Thank you, John Sheehy, who lives in Pengrove. And with that, we will call this meeting adjourned.
We have 2 items you haven't covered, 5 and 6 on the agenda. I doubt there's anything, but you should cover them. Okay.
Does anybody have any future commission? It shouldn't be future commission item agendas. That's interesting. But does anybody have suggestions for the June meeting or July or August? Barbara.
I just want to say, and I know we're all on board in this, it's probably going to happen anyway, but to have as complete a report as we can about the archives, about as much as it's possible to say when we meet at the June meeting.
Anybody else? And our next meeting is going to be Monday, June 7th. See you at 6 o'clock. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.